This is video number 76, and the title is The Four-Wheeler Hill. In a previous story, I talked about fishing with Bob and Pappy. We fished with them in the summer, and they came up the Friday before deer season and stayed with us to hunt deer in Scottsville the first week of the season. It was good for Pappy because he was able to get around fairly well. Bobby became chief of police in Strasburg, Pennsylvania in his mid-20s. He was my Aunt Irene's brother, and we had been good friends since we were kids. My dad's brother, Earl, was married to Aunt Irene. In the summer, when we were down at their house, I would go on night patrol with Bob. He went with me in deer season. This night was on a weekend before the season. The first day of deer was Monday. Pappy decided to hang out at the house and play cards with the neighbors, so Bob and I went out and about. We came upon a roadkill, so we picked that up and we took the scenic route by way of Windy Valley and finally wandered through Scottsville. We saw a good number of deer. Well, at this time I was driving my old 1974 Ford truck. It was a plain truck, no seat belts, no padded dash, crank-up windows, and a really low-geared 4-speed transmission. First gear in that truck was so slow, I swear I could put it in gear at idle and get out and change a tire. Moving up to the Dodge Power Wagon was a big change, although as in a previous story, it wouldn't go over 75 miles per hour. While traveling from Mahoopany and out Scottsville Road, you can turn left onto Cemetery Road that comes out in Jenningsville. About 40 or 50 yards before the turnoff to Cemetery Road, there was a steep side hill about 50 or so feet high on the turnoff side. When you turn in onto Cemetery Road, you go uphill some and then turn left into the field. I traveled back to the spot where later on I would be trusted by the sow and 2 cubs I discussed in another story. I dropped off the deer and there were no remains of the last one, which told me there was a bear in the area at that time. Coming out from dumping the deer, you would normally turn left and exit onto Cemetery Road. It hit me that I could pull a real practical joke on Bob. I had driven down the drop-off. Quad riders had tracks well defined on the side hill. I had driven my truck down at once and knew I could do what was formulating in my mind. It was almost straight up and down for the upper half and went slide-like on the lower half. I figured that if I drove off the top, I would hit the slope about halfway down. I would put both feet on the brakes and slide to a stop. This was a typical fully overcast winter night with no moon. Instead of turning towards Cemetery Road, I went straight and stepped on the gas. My headlights beamed out into absolutely nothing. We were airborne. Bob started screaming like a little girl saw a snake or a spider or something. I saw a motion out to my side and heard a strange noise mixed in with the screaming. I had both hands on the wheel and both feet on the brake pedal. It worked just as I planned. We hit about halfway down and slid on down and came to a stop in the middle of Scottsville Road. After we had come to a full stop, Bob's hands went up in the air and slammed down on the dash. He hit it so hard, I'm sure his fingerprints became embedded. This all happened in about 2 seconds, not much more, but I started to laugh. Now his screams were directed at me. You scared the living hell out of me. I just lost 10 years of my life. I'll get even if it's the last thing I do. The more he yelled, the more I laughed. The big tough police chief was screaming like a little girl. It was great. The motion I saw was his arms flaying around looking for something to grab. The strange sound I heard was him grabbing the sun visor and ripping it out of the ceiling of the truck. I was laughing so hard I could hardly breathe. He tried to even things up during a fishing trip. He would maneuver the boat so I would be soaked down every so often, but I'm sure it wasn't as effective as he'd hoped. Of all the stunts I pulled, this has to be number one, or at least in the top three. So let this story be a lesson for you. If you want to scare the hell out of a good friend, just drive off a cliff in the middle of the night. It'll work every time. Well, that's the end of my little story about the four-wheeler hill. Tomorrow is Good Friday, and this year is 2018. So I want to wish everyone a happy Easter. And as always, I wish everyone all the best.